My name is Harrison Phillip. Today I'll go over how we use the Pathway Van CPR survey for a CPR design. I first found out about this van in 2021. The district was asked to compare a CPR design that we already completed to what the van had collected. After setting up the meeting and going through the software, I was able to see all the cracks and spalls the van was picking up. I thought the van survey matched up pretty well with what we had. I think it picked up more cracks that were kind of hard to see in the field. The comparison, we only compared 2 lanes out of the 4 lanes of roadway that we had completed for the design. All in all, I thought it was a good resource to have. The following year, in 2022, we ran into a road that was in kind of rough shape. We decided that having a survey crew survey it would take too much time. I then remembered the comparison that we did with the Pathway van. I asked the district if that was possible to have the van run and do the survey. We asked Pathway Van Services to do it, and they said they could, but they would fit it into their schedule. The van completed their survey in October. The van can't do everything though, as far as picking up shoulders, and then to make everything easier, it can't pick up ramps. So we also had a survey crew go out and do the CPR survey for the ramps and also all the full depth concrete replacements. Even so, the survey crew was still able to complete that quicker than if they would go out themselves. Once you get the survey file back from the Pathway Van Services, you have to set up the software on your computer. I set up a Teams meeting so I could record the setup to use later if I needed. Once you have it all up and running, you're able to outline all the spalls you want to fix. Basically, you click and drag over the spall, and then it'll make a list of the location and the area of the spall. Here's what your computer will kind of look like once you have the software open on your desktop. There is a lot more information than what we needed in this Pathway software, but here's kind of a look at it. On the right, you can see the downward imaging of the van in the full lane. It's just 2 different views. And then in the middle, you can see the forward image. And then there's a little box on the left that allows you to navigate through the roadway. This is the window that this pop-up window is used for marking out spalls and cracks. You would run into a spall area. For instance, this area, you would then click one of these 3 spall areas, and then you'd click and drag, and then it would capture the size and location of the spall. You would then have to go through and do this to the whole roadway. Here are some more examples of what the downward imaging looks like. Basically, the downward image has 2 different views. As you can see here, this is an asphalt patch area, and then it would pick up the area and highlight it. It picks up joints and then also cracks. And then right here you can see it highlighted a little spall, but then like here they highlighted tinier spalls, which you would want to highlight this whole area for a spall repair. When you're done going through the whole project and making sure you outlined every spall area, the software then makes a list of all the cracks and spalls that you picked. The van does pick up the cracks. When you're done, this list is created, and then you would have to contact the person that helped you set up the software then, and they can convert this list into an Excel file. I was told that it's a lot easier for them to do it rather than us. There's a lot of time spent on the software to mark out the cracks and spalls, but you're able to do this during the winter months and not have 2 to 4 people on the job site during the summer months. After you're done with the software, another person or the same person has to go through the Excel and sort through all the spalls. This was our first time doing it, so we had a lot of small spalls to sort out. Also, the roadway was pretty bad, so the Excel list was pretty long for 2 lanes on interstate. I guess one of the first steps you want to do is take out the full depth concrete replacement locations that you did in the field. Here's an example of my Excel spreadsheet I had. This shows 1 mile of data only for just 1 lane. The tan or yellow orange color is the spalls, and then the blue is the cracks. And then it shows the location of the lane that the spall or crack is in, as far as left edge, center, right wheel path, center, and then the list goes on. The right side of the sheet, the highlighted red and yellow show which spalls were smaller and then larger than 1 square foot. I had to sort out those spalls. So the last slide was the driving lane. Here's the passing lane. As you can see, the passing lane had a lot more cracks than spalls in the same mile point. And then here's both of those driving and passing lane combined with our full depth infield survey. The reason I had the red and yellow highlighted areas is because there were way too many spalls that have on our set of plans. I guess due to the poor road condition, there were just way too many. And part of that reason is the way we outline the spalls in the software. As you can remember, the previous slide, there was a lot of small highlighted areas of spalls. We could have reduced that to 1 larger spall replacement, which we should have done, but we just didn't know how to use the software right away. So because of that, there was a lot more work in Excel to kind of sort out spalls and combine spalls. As you can see, this is I believe this is a driving lane for 1 mile. I was sorting out spalls, and there was 412 spalls that were less than 1 square foot. And then a lot of these were in the same RP. So I had to sort through, combine, and possibly get rid of spalls that we couldn't repair. And then this is the passing lane. As you can see here, there was 1,351 spalls that were less than 1 square foot in size. And then again, this is just 1 mile. The project outcome, again, the road was in rough shape, which is the main reason why we requested the van. It would just take our CPR or our survey crew way too long to complete the CPR survey. And then this was done during a time where I think we were in construction season, so our CPR crew, our survey crew had to do other things. And we only had probably a week window to complete it, which wasn't feasible. Because of the condition and the number of spalls we had, we added a 20% increase to all the quantities instead of the normal 10%. And even with that percentage increase, we were still experiencing a lot of overruns, which will be mentioned in the next presentation. As far as the plan sheets, we had 72 data sheets. 58 of those were mainline and 14 were ramps. Out of the 58, 33 sheets were used for just 3 miles of the interstate, which was 11.8-mile project. So that should give you a little bit representation of the road condition. Some things I would do differently is, again, make sure we use the software correctly and make sure the spalls are big enough to repair, and then combine spalls that were close together into the, I guess, 2x2 spall repair. And then there is a lot of time spent in Excel, but then again, you can have 2 people work in the winter months on this versus having a survey crew work when it's nice out and they have other activities to do. When to use this, I think, well, I didn't really think about using this van until we ran into this project. So I think long projects with really poor conditions, and then possibly in the future, high traffic areas, maybe this for as a safety aspect, keeping crews off the roads. Here's some more pictures of the van that I got. That's kind of all I got today. And if you guys want the contact of the Pathway Van Services, you can email me. I can send you that, and then they will get back to you if they can do the survey on your stretch of road or not. That's kind of all I got.
Could I ask a couple of questions before we jumped into the next
Go
part of
ahead.
the CPR thing? Did the software, was it able to discern? So I saw where it outlined all the cracking and things like that, but does it show any faulting on that crack? Like, how do you know if it is a crack or if it indeed should be a
It
full
does.
depth rather than just a crack repair?
There is another window for that. I mean, when you pull up the software, probably 10 windows pop up, and then you're able to see, like, if a crack was outlined as you go through this imaging and go forward and back. Let's say this crack you're going over, it does show the fault differences between the cracks. So the reason why we did the full depth cores or full depth replacement survey in the field is because it'd just be easier for us to kind of see it rather than going on the software and checking every crack to make sure there's a big enough fault line or to make sure it's a full replacement.
Okay. I guess one final question. With some of your overruns you guys were looking at there, do you think the software was not picking up like some of the extent of the spalls, like some of the decracking and stuff that a lot of times you can't easily see, I guess, without maybe doing a sounding of the concrete?
I guess part of the reason why we ran into overruns is because the van picked up a lot and I had to reduce the size. So like it would pick up these little guys here, as you can see, and I was more focused on fixing this area, you know. But I do, as far as using a hammer in the field, I believe the van probably can't pick up that part of it. I know there's always, CPRs are hard because there's always going to be increases.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, those are my two questions. Thank you.
But there are many views on this software. I didn't go through it too in depth. I was kind of just going through it to get the small areas and the cracks. There are a lot more features that are available to us that I didn't really dig into that far, but I did see the cracks. If you ran into a crack, it does show the fault differences in it. But then again, you have to go through 11 miles of survey, on each lane to make sure there's no big faults.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Hey Harrison, this is Dustin Lang in the Grand Forks District.
Okay.
Just curious, is this must be a relatively new thing. Do you know, were you like one of the first
Yes, we're
districts
the
to do a
first.
design off of this, or the
Yep.
first? Okay. Yeah, because even as recently as last summer, we were attempting to use a drone to fly an area and see if we could do CPR survey off of that. And so I wasn't even aware that this technology existed, in house here. So I'm the design leader for our district designs, and
Okay.
I feel like this would be a very useful tool
Yeah, so
for us.
when we did the comparison, we already surveyed Mill Hill and Valley City, which is this picture here. So we already did that survey. I think it was maybe, I can't remember how long that, maybe 2 miles. And then we did a comparison. So that survey, a 2-mile CPR survey is pretty easy to do. It doesn't take a lot of time. So we didn't really need the van per se, but then we were asked to kind of compare what the van had done to what we already surveyed and with a done design, and I thought it matched up pretty well. I didn't make an Excel spreadsheet of it, but I went basically on our design, went to every RP, and then followed the van RPs, and the van did pick up each location that we had on our design. So I kind of kept that in the back burner for when I didn't know when we were going to use it. So when we ran into this project on the interstate that was, of course, almost 12 miles long, 3 of those miles were in pretty rough shape. 3 miles doing a survey, pretty much every joint needed a small repair. So it was kind of a lot to survey. And especially with the DMIs that we have in our trucks, you kind of have to keep moving. You can't, our DMIs with the GPS ones, you can't go slow. So you have to make sure you reset on every mile marker to make sure the RPs are correct. And that's also a problem in the field too. Sometimes the RPs can be off a little bit.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I just hoping. Well, I'm assuming other designers or design coordinators are excited about this.
Yeah,
like
I
I am,
mean,
but you might be you're setting yourself up to be a point of contact for this now, right?
I hope not, but I actually, setting up when the survey's done and setting up the software, it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hard at the beginning, but then you kind of get used to it.
Yeah, I was
Like I
actually
said, there's a lot more in the software than we need, which could be a good thing also.
I was gonna kind of ask about that. It's like, how steep is the learning curve? They're gonna be resistance about like, can I just do it the old way type of mentality? But
Right, and I guess if everybody starts to use it, there might be videos or training videos on how to use the software. I guess we don't really know at this point. I just had one of the people from Pathway help me set up the software, and then when I was done outlining everything, I contacted him, and he basically took everything I outlined and had it in that list, and he sent over an Excel with all the information.
okay, thank you. Well, I appreciate you spearheading this.
Yeah, thank you.
On behalf of the rest of the districts.
Yep. Okay. Interstate Engineering was selected to do the CE work on this particular CPR. There was actually 3 CPR jobs tied together, but this was the holy moly of them both, or all 3 of them. This was 11.815 miles, and it was over by basically Cleveland to the Streeter exit. And as Harrison said, there was 3 miles in here that was in really rough condition. Just to kind of give you an idea of what the roadway was. On the driving lane, there was actually a CPR dowel bar retrofit done on it. And on the passing lane was just solid 10-inch poured-in-place concrete pavement. No dowels or nothing. So a lot of stress. There's a big hill in the middle a lot of stress coming down. I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, the quantities on this particular job, you can kind of see where we did over here on the right side. Dowel joints, there was 40 in the plans. We ended up at 264 lineal feet. On the 10-inch, we actually almost doubled the quantity, not quite double, 173% overrun. On this particular job, the transverse and the longitudinal seal were actually paid separately. So it was a little more work there, but as you can see, everything kind of correlated with the 10-inch, but the transverse and longitudinal obviously went up too because of that. Random crack was pretty close to the plan with the 20% overrun. And the spall repairs were pretty close too, but we had to do some changing in the field, and I'll explain what we did. Like I said, the plan note, they had 20% added in the quantities. You can kind of see where we came in at. Those are the big items there. The project cost was right around 1.6, and we came in at about 1.9. One thing I like to do on this particular job, what we kind of ran into is the van was used, which I thought did a great job. The only thing that I ran into is when you're dealing with 11-mile long job and the contractor's only working on a certain limit, you got to figure out where you're at. So what I like to do is I go out ahead of time and I run the stationing with my DMI to make sure that my mile points are actually what the mile points are according to the plans, because on this particular job, we had 72 pages. Obviously, not all of them were on the project. They were on the ramps too. But when you're jumping in the middle of a job to mark out everything, it's kind of gets a little hectic. And when you start looking at all the pages and all the spalls, it was very time consuming, and it took a lot of work. The other thing too on this particular job is when they came in, the heat during the day, it was actually causing the passing lane where the joints are at. I'll show you pictures here coming up. It was basically heaving all the joints. And the guys saw cutting were having a heck of a time because of that. But all that pressure from that 1.5 miles coming down that hill on that side, it was a lot of pressure. I've never seen pressure like that on a concrete road. It was, like I said, it was deteriorating. We would do an area, and about a month later, we'd be back on the other side, and there was like, well, how come we didn't get that spot? It was breaking that quick. One thing I like to do when I go into the CPR jobs is I do a cost analysis, spall versus full depth repair. I don't know if anybody ever does this, but on this particular job, when the joints are so bad, when you actually run the numbers, like on this job, it's a 2x2 minimum for a spall. I've done jobs where it's a 1x1, so you kind of got to watch your ratios. I like the 1x1s. It kind of gives you a little more flexibility, but on this one, it was a 2x2. So when I actually figured out if the whole joint was bad, 12 feet long, and I did the bid price for a spall is at $45 for a 2x2, and the 10-inch was 175 square yards. If you look at my math and my numbers I came up with here, it's actually cheaper to take out the joint and do a full depth panel if both sides of that joint were completely shot, or the majority of it was. So you kind of got to run those numbers to check out. It's actually cheaper to do a full depth than a spall in those cases. Here are some of the joints that we had to deal with, and you can kind of see what I'm looking at. By the time you fix both sides of the joint, it just made more sense to pull out full depth panels. So we had a lot on this road that, as you can see, a lot of mastic was out there. So it was a tough one. This is probably the toughest CPR job I've ever ran. Marking out CPR, you guys were talking about sounding earlier. We like to use our chipping hammers. Obviously the van picked up quite a bit, and as you can see the road, there was quite a bit of deterioration going on. So we like to use the chipping hammers just to find out where that sound concrete starts, because it's surprising how things can grow out there. If anybody's ever done one, they understand that. And like I said, when we were going through marking out, we made sure that we kept track in our brain that, hey, if it's this much of this joint, let's go to a full depth. And that's why our 10-inch numbers were over, but it actually got a better product. The other thing I like to talk about the contractors is schedule. And like I said, and this one was 11 miles long, so we had to do it in operations. And then we wanted to find out, are you going to do spalls first? Are you going to do full depth first? How we're going to mark this out? We actually started using pink paint, marking things out, and we found out the contractor was colorblind. So then we had to go back and use orange paint. So make sure you're talking to the contractors and what you want marked out and the timing. And then the timing on this one, we actually had a subcontractor come in to do the grinding of the spalls. So with that going on, and he came in force, they literally gave us 2 hours to start marking out ahead of them while they came in right behind us to work. So it's very time consuming, but once you get things marked out, it run pretty good. We had a very good contractor. They really busted it out pretty good. I got some videos to show you. All right, marking of the spalls. You can kind of see here the dowel bar retrofit. You see how some of that's breaking up in between. The dowel bar retrofit concrete was sound, but in between the dowel bars was completely shot. So we had to talk to the district and, what do you want to replace? What don't you want to replace? We needed to keep track of quantities as best we can. We also worked with the maintenance division to fix any patches. We stayed off of the shoulders because we wanted to concentrate on the driving lane and passing lanes more than the shoulders. So it became kind of a headache, but we had to do the best we can with the money we had. Like I said, some of these here were not picked up with initial surveys, so we had to talk to the Nathan Holland to make sure that we're doing what he wanted. Here's just an example of the machine that they came in on. Anybody's ever done this before, just make sure that they do not cut transversely because it'll grab hold and it'll fly into the ditch. I always cut longitudinally. You have 2 ways to cut them. Obviously, you can jackhammer or saw, or you can use the milling machine. Milling machine works great. The only thing is you got to make sure that you're behind these guys with your sounding hammer after they get them cleaned out to make sure they're getting all the bad concrete out. I guess that was our biggest thing, is we had to have some guy right in after them to make sure that right before they were sandblasting, because nobody wants to go through and do the headache of sandblasting and cleaning them, and then you come back and mark them out and say, oh, you got more to go. So it was kind of a timing matter. So we had to keep on them. We had guys busy. And the other problem we had with the milling machine is sometimes he would jump over if the spall was just on one side of the transverse crack. Sometimes it would jump over and get to the other side, which was actually good. And it got to the point where I made them take out a bunch, and they ate those costs on that because they weren't following our paint lines. So we had to work with them, and once we had to do it once or twice, they did pretty good after that. They weren't in such a big hurry. All right, here's some more spall removals going down the highway, making sure keeping things clean. As you can see, spall removal issue on site with the milling machine was going over the the good concrete. Like I said, you can see on the picture up on top, we had to make them fix that. And then obviously one of the biggest notes in here in the spec book is if a spall turns into a full depth. So make sure you're aware of those requirements too, because there's double pay on that. So all right, spalls cleaning and pouring. Obviously it's section 570, it's AE concrete. Grout is a mixture of Portland cement and fine aggregate. When removing the pavement, the engineer determines the exact damage occurred as a full depth repair, changed to a repair to a full depth. The engineer will measure the entire area for full depth repair. In addition, the engineer will measure half the area for spall repair. Make sure you're up on that. That becomes a kind of a headache. Sandblast the patch area, remove loose particles by air blasting. Had no problems really with that. Sometimes you'd have to hold off because of traffic. A lot of traffic on the highway. And then obviously you put a thin grout clean surface. It's got to be 40 degrees or more. Texture by dragging. This is all in the spec book, so make sure you're following the spec book best you can. And then here's a little video on the pouring. Kind of show it here. The biggest thing we learned is the hotter the day and the windier the day, the more curing compound you needed. Otherwise, we had cracking that occurs, and then they have to go back in and pull them all out and fix them again at their cost. So we learned some hard lessons. Try not to pour when it's super hot and super windy. And here's just another one, quick one here. This is showing the mixture for the grout. This is one of this is the key to make sure you get enough grout in there. Make sure you're getting enough cement paste down into that cavity, and then you can see them, they're right there to fill it up immediately. Gets kind of messy. And then obviously you got to put your bond breakers in and for your joints. I'll talk about that on full depth. That is a must. Okay. Then obviously the trawling, very important. These guys have a pretty good sized crew. I think there was about 18 guys out there. Guys with the pace, the guys came and shovel, the guys working. Trying to remember if this video has the pace going on. When you fill up your spall completely, when you go over the top of it, you should take your paste again and actually cover the edges where the seams are at so it blends into the other original concrete on the sides. It makes a big difference for cracking. Okay. All right, and then we'll go into a little bit about full depth repair. You can kind of see what we were dealing with out there. I guess the biggest thing on the full depth repair is you got to watch out for existing dowels. I like to take my metal detector and go out there and take a look. That's when I was finding out on certain sides there was no dowel bars, and sometimes there is. Basically, you want to cut past that dowel, so you're actually going to take about a foot back into the good concrete on the other side when you do your full depth, just so you can cut if there is any dowels in there or anything. Rebar, you cut that out so you have good fresh concrete to tie into. Now here's our full depth repair removal. Saw cutting had to be done early in the morning. We were actually out there really early in the morning because the heat was expanding the concrete so bad that when these guys were saw cutting, as you can see on the pictures there, how many blades they were getting stuck. And then sometimes when they got done cutting, they pulled the blade up and that concrete would actually slam together and water would shoot up about 3 to 4 feet. Like I said, I've never seen that before, and it was really interesting, but it was a headache. These guys were getting a lot of blades stuck. All right, full depth repair. Like I said, watch out for existing dowels. Need to cut back at least 1 foot in the next panel if the dowels are present. As you can see these pictures, if you look on the left picture, you can see that little tiny piece of fiberboard up there. When you cut a joint out, you got to put that in there because otherwise that crack's going to continue through. You got to put that bond release in there so that the joint will actually open up and it'll go longitudinally, then come down. I'll have a picture showing why you have to do that. Right here is like I said, if you put that bonding agent in on the sides of it, it stops the crack from coming through. And then as far as your dowels, as far as replacement of your dowels and your rough dowels, rule of thumb is rough on, smooth off for direction of travel. Don't forget the expansion, like I said, on the adjacent to the panel placement. Then as far as any notes for longitudinal joints, make sure you read the plans on that. They're usually set up for full depth panels. These partials, they did not. So you got to carry that joint around. If you look at the picture on the bottom left, this contractor just tried to cut that joint without putting that bonding agent. And you can see that concrete, it was only like 30 days old and it already broke because he did not put that piece of board in there to shift the crack the other way. Repairs, big crucial thing, installation of dowels. Need to make sure correct spacing, make sure they're straight and not out of alignment. I actually go on with a square and hold it on there to make sure that they're straight. These guys had a machine, worked out great. If you ever see them drilling by hand and the dowels are going this way and that way, it's the point of the dowels are to be straight and true, so you have movement. Smooth will move and the rough stays tied. So Just make sure your holes are clean and epoxy is used. And we obviously light coat the free end of the smooth bar with grease. And then one thing that we learned out there is when installing the dowels, try not to skimp out on the epoxy. And when they put the bars in, the dowel bars in, they actually take them and they turn them 90 degrees and twist them to make sure that they're actually in all the way and the expansion is in there. If they just slam them in, they're going to go up and down. These guys actually did it right. They came in and they turned them and they set them in perfect. So it turned out really nice. And then they have a video of this. Would not want this guy's job. This was very loud, but did a really good job. And these guys could hammer them out pretty quick. All right, full depth repairs on the pouring of them. Obviously, section 570. It's double AE concrete. Obviously, when you start doing full depths, they have to be done within 48 hours of placement for 100 feet. And don't forget to dampen the faces of the existing concrete, the placement before new concrete. And then obviously we don't want to forget our bond breakers up on the existing transverse joints where we're going to move them back a foot if need be. Obviously provide finished concrete that is flush with the adjacent pavement surfaces. This is a tough note. On this particular job, the shoulders were actually just keywayed into the passing lane roadway. So what was happening is the shoulders were actually moving up and down, and the contractor, if he tried to meet the shoulder elevation, it did not meet the road elevation. So we kind of got into a fight over that on straight edging. So I guess for future, what I've kind of learned is at the pre-job, I'm going to talk to the contractor at the pre-job and let them know that when we straight edge, it's going to be in the wheel pass of the lane itself. So make sure you're aware of that. This job had no grinding on it, so it became kind of a battle at the end. Obviously, texture and dragging carpet, then apply your minimum rate of cure of 1 gallon per 150 square feet of pavement. Like I said, cure is key. So you can kind of see what we dealt with here. The shoulders were up. There was existing grinding lips. It was very tough. They did pretty good. At first, they kind of were relaxed and we got on them, and then they did a really good job after that. And it didn't turn out too bad. Obviously, on your full depth pouring, you can kind of get some pictures here. Pretty big crew. They'll come through and these guys would slam out probably close to 200 yards a day on the full depth panel replacements. They were pretty good at it. And here's just a little video. As you can see, when they're doing this, you got that roller right there. The problem we had is there wasn't enough down pressure on some of the sides of the roller. So they actually, you can see the guy way on the upper back, he's pushing down on that handle to give a little more down pressure. Because after we started, we were straight edging and we were finding there were some deficiencies as far as the straight edging. So they had to go back. So some of them towards the end, we were probably making 3 passes on our full depths just to make sure that we were getting the proper height to meet tolerances. Sealing. This was kind of a little chore here too. On this particular job, the transverse, longitudinal, and the random crack were all pay items. I've done jobs where the transverse and longitudinal are incidental to the full depth, which makes life a little bit easier. But the biggest thing is the sealing, to make sure that you get enough seal in the crack, but yet it isn't gooving out so that in the wintertime, the trucks don't hit it and peel it out. As you can see on the right, they had a couple spots and they had to come back and we tried to fix them. So, and then as far as make sure you read your plan notes for sealing. Like I said, we had 3 different pay items. Don't overfill. Make sure they're cleaning them. These guys did a really good job of cleaning and sealing. There was a different crew that came in, so really good job. And then obviously safety first. We were pouring a bunch of full depths and a truck came through, was not paying attention and turned in our lane and went through, I think it was 6 full depth areas and took out his whole truck and just missed the crew by about 300 feet. So safety is key.
So from Apex here today, we've got myself, Levi Heller, and James Mickelson. Levi and James will be talking about some of the projects they worked on. I'm just going to kind of give a little introduction of the app here. Also today, we've got Dave Thomas joining into the meeting. So he's with OnStation. He's the business development director. We've been working with him the last couple of years on getting going with this, and he'll be available to answer any questions that you might have related to projects. Or he's also working with several other DOTs that are using this kind of internally as well for some other maintenance type things and general operations. So different ways that it can be used. So we'll kind of give you the little agenda here. Start out talking about what was the problem. Well, the problem is how many times are you on a project, and you need to figure out what station you're at or what station something's at, and it's just not readily available. So we'll go through a couple examples of that, and then we'll talk about the solution OnStation and what it is. Levi will talk about how we get projects set up in the app, some of the best practices that we've found, and some rural project examples. And then James will jump in and talk about some urban projects and how we bring in some design files and design layers to kind of help out with identifying things as we're using the app in the field. And then we'll have time here at the end to do some demonstrations, answer any questions that you might have. And so here's the problem. Well, really, what's the problem? This is, if anybody can identify where this is, I'll give you a hint. It's Highway 3. If you're out here on beautiful Highway 3, you just finished a paving project, but now you got to go mark out your full depth core. Somebody else came and picked up the lath. How are you going to figure out what station or where the station is that you need to mark your full depth core? If you maybe don't have survey equipment, you're kind of stuck with, maybe if you find an approach that what station the approach is supposed to be on, you wheel off from there, or maybe use your DMI and hope that it's calibrated. How accurate are you really going to be with all of that? Or maybe this is something that actually happened to me on a project. You finished paving and you had to go mark out no passing zones, and the maintenance guys got excited and started mowing the ditches and taking out the lath along with it. So things like that happen. But if you don't know what station you're at or what station you need to be at, that's where the problem comes in. And if you're wondering, this is beautiful Highway 3 south of Harvey. This is maybe not quite as beautiful, but it's another, big project where maybe you had lath that disappeared, or you marked your center line on the pavement. Now the paint marks are gone. And you want to go take a test down on the kind of left side of the road there where they're running the sheep's foot. How are you going to figure out what station you took your test at? Well, maybe you have a surveyor on the project, and the surveyor could come give you a station offset of where that test was, but maybe right now he's at the other end of the job getting set up, and it's going to be, later in the day when he finishes up some other stuff that he'll be able to get over there. And by then, contractor's going to have another lift on and won't be able to tell you where that test was taken. Or maybe your surveyor got bored and went for a swim or did whatever surveyors do when exploring. Just kind of, these are some of our surveyors here at Apex. We like to give them a hard time, but you can't always expect surveyors to be at your beck and call when you need them. So one thing that we've started doing is training our inspectors on using GPS rovers. And they've been great for, getting quantities and points for as-built and things like that. But they're expensive units. We usually don't, have those, more than one of those on a project at any given time. And so we still kind of have the issue of what station are we at? And the other thing with the GPS rovers are great, but they're not communication tools. So even if you do know what station you're at with the rover, you still got to communicate that to somebody else on the team. And here's another project. And if you can imagine being on this project, you know, there's just a lot going on here. You don't necessarily have the time to figure out where your lath are at that you need to pull off of to figure out your stationing, or maybe there's an issue that you want to communicate with another inspector or your project engineer, but you've got multiple contractors, you've got dozens of workers that you're monitoring, and things happen pretty fast on this type of project. So, you know, you need to be very clear in your communication. And then sometimes you get multiple phone calls going on different text message threads and email chains, and it's sometimes hard to keep up with all of that. So another problem here that we've kind of been trying to find ways to address is here's a great photo of a water main installation. But if you're getting to the end of the project and you want to be able to know exactly where and when this project was taken, that can be a challenge, especially for somebody who wasn't familiar with the project. And you know, maybe from the surface, this is all you see is that, you know, 3 gate valves there. And the other thing with this picture is, you know, would you know from the surface, would you know that the nut for this gate valve is actually on the side of the water main and not vertically over the top? So things like that, documenting photos and having all that information stay with that photo and be able to recall it later is something that we've been trying to figure out a way to do. And so that's where a couple years ago, we actually had a conference, kind of learned about OnStation and started looking into it as a possible solution. And really what it is an app that we can use on our phones, we can use on iPads, you can use on your desktop. It uses the GPS signal of that device, just like the way you know, Google Maps or anything like that would use to pinpoint your location. You bring in your alignments and design files, and then you can know exactly where you're at. You can also move around within the project, know where other things are at as you go along. So everybody's got a phone in their pocket, so you've always got that tool available to you. It kind of eliminates the need of having to find a surveyor or grab a GPS unit or you know, run over the lath or a fixed point that you know what the station is. You've got that information always available to you. So you know, instead of running around trying to find the stick, like I said, a couple of the benefits, you know, you're not roaming around the project looking for those known points. You've got the communication tool where James is going to kind of show how you can actually have a chat within the app. And then you've got the documentation of all that has got all that station offset location tied to any type of photo or pin that you might drop within the app. So these are kind of just showing a couple of the features and how they look, and we'll get into that a little bit more here, but I'm going to pass it off to Levi. He's going to talk about how we get those projects set up, and then some examples of the ways that he's used it on a couple projects.
Thanks, Brent. So the way we've started to use it, we started with it on our phones. Every one of our inspectors had it on their iPhone or their Android phone. We can also run it on iPads, which is handy. It's a little bit bigger screen, and we already have iPads out in the field to do contractor compliance interviews. And lastly, you can also run it right off your desktop on a mobile app. So 3 different areas, and they kind of have their different pluses and their minuses to them, and a little bit more ease sometimes on your desktop if you're doing mass things, but in the field, the iPhone and the iPad are generally the way to go. So we'll talk a little bit how we actually get our stationing into on stationing. Ideally, maybe it's a total reconstruction, and from the design portion of it, we already have some sort of alignment that was built in AutoCAD or Bentley. And those LAN XML files can be exported directly right to OnStation to be loaded in the app. If you don't have that, like maybe some rural paving jobs or something like that, you can actually send them the Section 81 sheets, and they can build the alignment right off the 81 sheets. Obviously, that's going to be a little more time consuming depending on how many PIs and different points you have in there. And lastly, probably the least accurate would be you can actually draw a line in Google Earth, or maybe your client or someone provided you with a alignment in Google Earth. You can also send that to them, and they can put them in. Only thing with that, if you draw it in Google Earth, you're going to want to make sure your left and right accuracies are probably not going to be, offsets are going to be as accurate as if you have a alignment that you build. So one of the projects we started to use this on a couple of years ago, it was a mill in overlay up on Indy 3 in the Devil's Lake district. So first thing we did, we looked at the project. It did have some alignments on it. The alignments actually only covered the first 1.5 miles of the 20-mile project. So that was an issue. And then in that first 1.5 miles, there was about 5 or 6 station equations, which can be kind of a hassle for the people in the field to make sure that you're in the right area and going off the right stationing. Direction of work, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit here further in the future, but that's important. And then lastly, if you're on a job that calls out intelligent compaction, thermal profiler, and you don't have an alignment on it, it's just another good reason to get it in here. And then you can also use it in OnStation. So kind of continue on. We're kind of continuing it the old school way, where we'd go out and split the road on each side of the section line and every half section, and then we'd take a GPS unit out there and go out and shoot those points, go through the curves, split the road every 50 feet, shoot those points also. And then as a good practice, we also like to go out and shoot all the RP markers just as a cross reference. Sometimes in the plans, things are referenced off of RPs, or we feel like it's just another good check with our stationing if we need it. So we take all that data, we combine it, bring it back in the office, and then we start building our alignment. We will do a best fit alignment through those points. You can see this example on the left. This was the stationing that was provided in the plans on the ND3 project with one of the stationing equations. So after we compiled all of it, tried to see how the alignment fit the road and everything. On this project, after talking to the contractor, we decided to run 2 alignments. We had the alignments that were in there from the plans, and then we ran a construction alignment because the contractor was going to pave this project from the north to the south, and we wanted stationing to go positive with that. So we ended up doing a construction alignment that got rid of all the station equations and just really cleaned up the project. Moving on, kind of how we use the app day to day in the field after we got the alignments put in there. This is an ND 18 mill and overlay in the Fargo district between Castleton and Leonard, about a 20-mile project. There was no alignments provided on this project. So we did the same process of before. We went out and split the road and built an alignment for it. While we're out on the project here, we would, during normal days of paving, we would put flags out, and that's what you can see is these little dots on the screen to the right. And if we zoom in on those dots, some of the specific flags that we're talking about here, before we even started paving, set one of the inspectors out, and they marked all the barrier stripes and put them all in the app, because I think we all know that on a paving job, maybe the orange poles are missing out on the right of way, or it can get a little confusing. So this really helped us reestablish our temporary pavement marking and our permanent pavement marking in the end. We also would mark our tack coat start and stop every day. Sometimes the contractors get a little ambitious about how much tack they put out compared to how much asphalt they put out. So it's a nice way to track quantities so that they don't try to overcharge us for the amount of tack that they're putting out when they refresh that existing tack up the next day. And then one of the big things we do, the blue flag on the bottom, is our daily paving lots. So we'd mark those every day, and then it was in the app so everybody knew. So our tester knew where our lots were. Our inspectors that were putting it in the inspection diary knew where our lots started and stopped, and so did the project engineer. So everybody was having consistent paperwork. A couple more everyday uses that we did here. Traffic control signs, it was a big, really, we use that a lot. You know, when you start to get up to some of these intersections, there gets to be a lot of existing signs out there, and we have to shift positioning of the sign to go out and lay out signs for traffic control. Both of these projects didn't really utilize the e-ticketing. So our ticket taker out in the field had his phone in his hand all the time, and every truck that dumped, we knew exact station it was. He wasn't guessing between two lath that were stationed 500 feet apart. Our tester, we gave him access to on station. So when he'd come out and get a sample by the paver, he knew exactly what station he was taking it from. We'd go out when we would set our core locations. All of our cores were marked with on station, which in the end helped us go verify that all those cores were filled after construction or the day after paving was. And you go right to those core locations, which can kind of be tricky to find out in the field when you're driving through the project. Same thing with marking every day that we stopped paving. We knew exactly where to go and check joint with a straight edge. That was really handy. And another thing that's an app that we use too, this approach on the right-hand side in this picture, this was added between when the plans were done and when construction started. So it was quite a large approach. We went out and we were able to measure it in the OnStation app. We got a rough square footage that you can see at the top. And then now we know where we're going to steal a little mix from. Is it going to be mainline, or maybe we have enough in approaches to handle that? Kind of lastly, on our overlay projects are just punch lists. We go out, you can take a picture right through the app. It timestamps it, dates it, puts the location and the alignment in all the pictures, so you can kind of see what those pictures. And we shared them directly with the contractor, who else was using OnStation. So it was kind of a plus for us, because they knew they were using to do their final cutoffs for the end of the day, and the tack truck driver was using it to figure out where he was spraying tack with. So it was definitely a good addition to the project to have both people on OnStation. This is a project we did last summer in Fargo on both I-29 and 94. You can kind of see, this is just an overview. We had actually 8 different station or alignments on this project. We worked with OnStation to make sure that they were all color coded differently, so that there wouldn't be any confusion between them. But you can definitely handle quite a bit of stations on them, or alignments, excuse me. You know, and probably one way to look at OnStation is it's just a way to display GIS information. So we have this map of the districts. This can be an overlay that's put into OnStation that you can pull up at any time. So, you know, maybe as a consultant or someone like us that maybe don't definitely know where the break lines are at for all the districts, it can be helpful. It could be the electrical layout for the overhead lining and the lighting in the Bismarck district, in the Bismarck area there. Or maybe Justin's driving to check up on a project in the Fargo district, and he comes across a bridge on North Dakota 18 that, you know, the guardrail had clearly been hit in the last couple of days, and he can stop, mark that, and he can mark it with the mile marker on the bottom, which is the same as the RP that we're used to hearing. And that's statewide, that the mile markers are already in the state. You don't have to build an alignment or anything different with that. So Justin can mark that, send it off to the appropriate people in the districts for attention. So it's just something that's already out there that can be used statewide. That's kind of the rule and the meat and potatoes of how we get alignments in a project. I'm going to pass on to James, who's going to discuss some of his urban experiences.
Coming into the warp space here. So yeah, I was project manager on this 32nd Avenue South project in Fargo last summer. And a large part of this type of project is the underground utilities. This first block here, we did a full replacement of the water main. We did the lining of the sanitary sewer, and then we installed a new 60-inch concrete storm sewer parallel to the existing storm sewer system. And as you can tell, there's just a lot going on with those utilities, and OnStation has just been a real helpful tool for organizing all of that data. And so kind of get more into the details of kind of pair into the alignment is the CAD files for this project and any project really in AutoCAD or MicroStation. Important to set the coordinate system, whatever county coordinate system or coordinate system you're designing in, just to make sure that that drawing is set to that, so that when the OnStation folks get it, they have a point of relativity to all those lines. And so once you send them these CAD drawings, they're able to stick them in the app. And this is kind of what that looks like in the app on the right side of my screen. So pretty neat process, really, really nice, handy tool on an urban project to have a point of bearing to these utilities, as that's kind of follows a workflow of the project. So kind of pair up a little bit more about these CAD drawings. Each CAD drawing OnStation kind of treats it like a layer. And so for this 32nd Avenue project, we broke out the main line from the sidewalk and the driveway line work, as well as the sanitary water, storm sewer, and then we had the right of way as well. And so just as you're kind of going through the construction phasing, sometimes you don't want to necessarily see all of that at one given time. And so it's pretty handy to have all these layers just as you're working through kind of a busier project like this. So to kind of pair into, what's the first thing you're going to do when you get into OnStation and you want to drop an icon for a particular utility or construction item that you're looking at. You're met with this screen, and when you drop that flag, you got to pick your marker icon, and this really is the primary and your first sorting tool for any workflow items you're taking a look at. And so if you get together with your team and you kind of organize which icons you're going to be using, it kind of really helps later on to sort those out if you're looking at storm sewer, sanitary, and that type of thing. And the kind of a secondary sorting item OnStation is added, and I'll just say working with them in the last couple of years, they're certainly adding different features and things to help with this sorting. And anyway, so the bid items here on the right side are work items that can be paired with the icons, and you can sort kind of the pins that way as well, which again gets helpful on a busy project. And I think here's probably the main point with OnStation that we're really getting at is the collaboration with it. You can choose to take an icon and basically keep it on your app by itself, or you can share it with your group on the project, or you can make a custom group if you're sharing externally with the city or DOT. Lots of options there. And so this is kind of how it looks like once you drop that pin and I share it with you. Here's a storm sewer cap we put on because we kind of started away from the river here, so we're continuing on with this project. And here you can see Aaron put who installed it, and it gives you the date. And if you click on the picture, as Levi was talking earlier, gives you a little more information. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And we have hundreds and hundreds of photos like this on the left. You could assume it's water main by the color of the pipe, and that's really about all you can glean from this picture. But OnStation really helps in the background. It's automatically giving us a timestamp and a station and offset to the project alignment we put in there earlier. And then the bottom left, you see it gives a little icon of where you were standing when you took the actual picture, and And then on a project like this, it's kind of invaluable to have all this information sorting in real time. One more thing I wanted to touch on is you have all these icons in the app, you know, long term, what do you do with them? And so OnStation has different packages. Part of their data package is you can export those icons into Google Earth or ArcGIS or a CSV. And they can actually take the individual pins and create a PDF summary. And so that kind of gives you some long-term storage solutions for all this information that you know you're not going to lose. And here's kind of a little take on that PDF summary. Again, it has all the information that's already in the app, but it puts it in a place that you can store it for a while there. One thing I was going to do real quick here is just run into the app and kind of just show you the process of, can everybody see that? Am I going to have to just stop sharing?
I can see it, James. It looks good.
Okay, perfect. So so here we've got kind of the districts that we were looking at, and then here's the 32nd Avenue South project with the pictures, and you can see some of the additional testing. But it's as simple as clicking on this flag here. Again, you're faced with which icon to use. So I'll just do kind of a quick water one, and we'll call it water main. We'll drop it. And then from that point on, you've got all that information relative to the alignment. The data was created on Brent's computer, so it's saying he created it. And then here through the chat, you can go to the photo icon and take a picture. And again, that's going to have all that geo-referencing right there. Here's the sharing I was talking about. We can add to that and pick custom groups, share it with everyone on the project. The work items, you know, you can pick the bid items that are associated with that. And then there are quite a few features like forms here, you know, if you had a testing form or a core log, or, you know, I think there's a couple different options there to use. But these are kind of the features that we've utilized on OnStation. But I think there are a lot of other features. Well, I know there are a lot of other features that you could kind of incorporate with this app. And so kind of with that, oh, sure, yeah. And like here you could download a PDF of your plans as well, like if you wanted a digital quick reference, you know, rather than shuffling through what you got here. But yeah, that's kind of our take on the app. Really thank y'all for listening here. We've got Dave Thomas on the line. Of course, all of us are still here. So if you have any questions about how we used it, I seen some stuff kind of funnel in here through the chat. So I'll invite the guys here to come with me and kind of dig through that.
So Dave, you maybe want to just kind of touch on maybe some of the other states that how many other states your DOTs you're actually working with, and maybe kind of how they use it, project specific, and maybe, you know, operationally as well.
Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. So right now, OnStation is actively being used by 12 different DOTs in some capacity across the country. We have over 1,400 projects built into the app, so it's been growing, and we continue to find new use cases for it as we go. Primarily being used on those heavy highway, new construction jobs of new roads being installed or new highways being installed. But we do have some state DOTs, especially in their maintenance departments, starting to pick up the app. Simply because, again, if your state has already created linear reference system maps or mile marker maps, we are data displayers. We can take those GIS files that you've already created and provide a way for anybody that has a phone or tablet to be able to reference that information, take notes about the work that they're doing, and then share that information with other people that are relevant. So again, any questions that people have about how to get started, how to get a project loaded, happy to sit here and answer some questions.
And Dave, maybe I see there was a question on at the accuracy. So really it's two things, right? It's how good of GPS coverage do you have where you're at, and what's the quality of the GPS hardware within your phone or your iPad or whatever you're using. But I think you guys say that 5 feet and in is pretty consistent. So
yeah, generally the first thing that people do when they get on the project for the first time is they'll take the app and they'll go stand next to like a known control point or a known survey stake. And in really good situations, again, good weather with good hardware, we can be down to, within a foot of what that survey stake says. Generally speaking, though, my recommendation would be to, when you're out on the project for the first time in the day, pull open the app, try to find a known location, and that will give you like a general relevance of how accurate the app is. We say, again, between 5 to 7 feet, which is close enough for most of the inspection work that's happening. Obviously, if you're putting in a bridge deck or something that needs high grade, GPS equipment, we're not there to replace that. We are supposed to be location services at scale. So again, anybody with a phone or a tablet, we can give you a general station alignment and offset for anywhere you are on the project, and the ability to document that work against the project plans.
So we've got time here. If anybody has questions or wanted to see something else demonstrated within the app. Again, what James was showing, that view is the desktop view. You see the same thing on your phone, your iPad. And so it's been really helpful to be able to, you've got it on your phone in the field. Maybe you want to drop a quick pin on something, and then when you're back at your desk or field office, you can get on your computer and you can get back to that pin. And like Levi said, you can grab exactly what station the paving stop for the day or where the tack was applied for that day when you're doing your diaries. Another helpful thing has been with all those photos and that information, attaching that into the daily diaries in cars, just supplementing your daily diaries with those attachments. Has been another nice way to keep those as part of the project records. So there's a question on. Okay, so
I just saw that one come in. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
go ahead,
Jason,
David.
Great question. I will link, I'll send a link to our website. We call it our project submission form directly on our website. All we require is first name, last name, email address of the person submitting the job. We ask for the contract number as well as the road name of where the project, is happening. And then there's a document library at the bottom of the form where you're able to attach CAD drawings, PDF plan sets. We can also ingest the pay line item list for the contract. So again, if you're dropping flags, you can start to tag those flags against the specific materials listed out in that pay line item. We take all of those files, and then that's all the user has to do. Our engineering team cleans up the CAD files, publishes the project inside of OnStation. It takes us about 2 weeks to turn the project around, but then we'll send you a text and an email with specific instructions on how to access that project through the app. But again, it's pretty easy to get started. Really just send us the CAD files. We'll do all the hard work and the engineering services around it, and then provide access to that through the platform.
And then I think after we've gotten some of those products back from you, Dave, we noticed something like we didn't like the alignment colors that we had on I-94. And that was when we reached back out to, that was a pretty quick turnaround to get simple things like colors changed and things like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the initial project setup is what takes the most time of, adding the alignments. I always say that these are living projects in OnStation, right? If they're design build jobs, for instance, and there's a new maintenance of traffic layer that gets released, or, a new section of the drainage network that needs to be added, if you send us the updated information, either as a DWG or a KML file, we make the update to the project, and that just pushes live to all of the end users. There's no deleting the project and re-downloading it to access the new information. These are just live organic jobs that as new information gets added to them, it's just available through your phone or tablet when you're working on the job.
Yeah, and I think Levi touched on it too, but the measuring feature in here has been really nice to be able to go in and measure your different areas. Like he said, if you had an approach that you needed to pave out, or maybe an area where you needed to do a subcut or something like that, you can get your measurements in square feet, square yards, miles or acres, depending on the size, all right within the app. And then switching to the different alignments is just as easy as going in and selecting your alignment that you want to go to. And so within this project, like Levi said, we had 6 different alignments.
You can scroll down there.
Within there. So
yeah.
Oh, there, yeah.
They're kind of buried.
There's quite a few. So made it a lot easier in the field to be able to translate from one to the other where you were actually at, especially like he said, when paving this auxiliary lane, you were probably going between 3-4 different alignments, all with that one pave, 1,500 foot pave crossing several different alignments. So
Yeah, and kind of another cool feature they've added too is just so you're not hopping between them, you can hit this lock button on or off, and that'll kind of keep to your alignments so you're not constantly toggling between multiple different ones. And that's kind of some of the small things I think we've noticed that the group over at OnStation is doing a really good job about, is paying attention to the details of those types of stuff.
One quick thing here too, if I get out of the measuring tool. So, you can, when you're in the app, you can pan around. You can also always just go to your location. So it brought me right back to where I'm actually at in my office here. So, that's where I am. But that project was right over here, so not too far away. But so you can put your crosshairs on yourself. If you're standing next to that water main and you just want to get a picture of it, and it's going to automatically take you right to where you're at, or maybe you want to figure out what station this high mast light is at and tag a note right at that point. Kind of 2 different ways to get the station of where you're at, or the station of where something else is kind of on the map.
This is Joe from Fargo. For Brent and Jared, I guess what I would like you to do is go back to that I-94 project and show all them alignments again, and speak to how much time we saved, or you saved, by doing the OnStation versus having multiple surveyors out there. I mean, from setting up signs and just doing all the work off the 2 interstate stations, and the multiple ramps we had was a huge savings. And we just finalized that project, I think, and we were way under budget. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the efficiencies of using this in an urban area like that.
Yeah. So this project is just kind of a little overview of it. We're adding a auxiliary lane from the tri-level to the 25th Street ramp, but it was mostly a signing project. So we had to replace 5 overhead, those big overhead sign structures. So the project actually stretched from almost Main Avenue to the interchange of I-94 and I-29 all the way to 25th Street. And you can imagine being on the interstate, traffic control was pretty crazy. So this was one of the places that we really utilize OnStation to do our temporary traffic control. We had setting out tapers, setting out signing, trying to fit signs in between other signs, like I said before. This definitely isn't a tool to replace Rover. You know, when we're trying to put those foundations in for those overhead sign structures, they had to be very accurate. We're not doing that, but I can tell you, when you have so many of those sign structures, existing ones and new ones that we're putting up, just to know what one you're under, pull up OnStation, we had the location right away, and that's a lot of times that's all you need to know. I think I was kind of telling the guys earlier, we'd go out on these rural jobs on reconstruction. We'd have wood lath out on the right of way, 75 feet away. You almost need a set of binoculars to see what station you're at, and you know, it just provides a lot of benefit. The one thing that we did use on this I-94, the plans kind of jump between, you'd start on one stationing or one alignment, then you'd move to another alignment doing the same task, and we were able to pop between the two alignments almost like it was doing a station equation or you know, equivalent on the two equations, and it really made it easier for paperwork and everything like that. I mean, yeah, do we still have to go out and measure some stuff with the wheel and do different things like that because we need some accuracy on it, of course. But I think at some points we almost overdo accuracy on some of these projects where it's not needed also.
Yeah, on this project too, it was, you know, that's kind of where the safety aspect of it comes into play. Because if you were on one side of one of these ramps and you needed to know the station on the other side, you know, you're taking your life into your own hands every time you're moving about these type of projects. So to be able to have this tool and just grab your phone and pan around and find those station equations and different location information while you're sitting safely in your vehicle off the side of the road or wherever. And like Joe said too, to not have to bring our surveyors out multiple times a day to help us out was a huge benefit to them as well.
I see there's a question about whether we can bring design line work in, and so to go through and toggle some things here. So this is exactly what we have in here. This purple line work is our sidewalk and driveways. And then I think we also have, I can toggle on the storm, which is all the pink, and you can see our actual manholes with the names of the manholes and all the catch basins. So kind of like we said before, whatever you can do in CAD, you can bring into OnStation. And I you know, when we first started doing it, there was a little bit of a learning curve on what simplified to bring this data in, and blocks and structures like that it was just simpler to just break it down to simple line work. And then we had specific colors we wanted things, and I think James, after he going through it, he's like, well, it's hard to see on some of these aerials. So it was a quick email to OnStation like, hey, we need this layer changed to a different color so it stands out a little better. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities on that.
And a nice thing here with this was a reconstruct, and so you know, we were actually putting you know, new storm sewer inlets and curb kind of inside the existing roadway footprint. You know, things, it wasn't a direct replacement of what was out there. So to be able to see the design overlaid on your map on your phone, right, you know, so you can walk right to where that inlet's going to go and make sure that, you know, hey, yep, this is going to work, or this is where an inlet's going to go. So shoot, now there's a gas line here. I got to call the gas. Yeah. I got to call the gas company. You know, they didn't do very good locating. That's exactly what happened on on this project was
Yeah.
we had a gas line that was about 2 to 4 feet one way or the other where they actually had it located. So it was very helpful to have that design information right in the app.
Yeah.
So, the question about the PDF reports, I think this is the right one, right, James?
Yep.
So this is an example of the reports that you can print off every day and then put them into your diaries as needed.
Or even in the interim, like quickly, we've taken screenshots of like our icon chats, just kind of as an option for a quick record of documentation. And I utilize that a lot in my project diaries for specific underground items, just like this one.
And I'll just add there too, James. So this is an example of a flag record in OnStation, right? So James dropped this flag. It calculates the location with the station alignment and offset, the mile marker points. That is a point of data that can also be exported into a GeoJSON file. So for instance, if the North Dakota DOT is using, Esri or ArcGIS for any long-term storage of assets, we can pull that digital file out of OnStation and repurpose it inside of Esri. I also saw somebody ask about, if this could be used for quantities as well. I'm not sure what the North Dakota DOT uses. We've had several other states that are customers of OnStation that also use AstroWare Project. We're exploring an integration through the Open API for that system to start being able to take our flags and our pictures, tag them with a pay line item, tag them with a quantity, and then transfer that information directly into AstroWare Project so that it can be used to pay the contractor off of. That's still in the early stages, but just that's sort of the way that we're thinking about this is, if the data is collected in OnStation, how do we get it out so that the DOT can use it not only for long-term storage, but also as a part of their payment process to the contractors.
And Dave, you're working on, and you've already got some integrations with some e-ticketing services as well. Can you touch on that and how that works?
Absolutely. So from our experience and understanding, a lot of the e-ticketing vendors capture location information with lat-long coordinates. We are right now connected with a system called FleetWatcher, where they use hardware that goes in the truck and the paver, and it creates a geofence. And when those geofences cross on a project, it stamps a lat-long coordinate on the ticket. With FleetWatcher, we're able to take that lat-long coordinate and actually convert it automatically into a station alignment and offset. Just removes one person from having to accept tickets and write down the station information, because the FleetWatcher database and the OnStation database can talk together and make that conversion from a lat-long coordinate into a station offset on the project. And then we also represent those through our data portal with their own separate unique icon, which gets really interesting if you want to map out, okay, here's a map of all my material deliveries. And then I'm also using OnStation flags to mark out where I did my density tests, my cross slope tests, any of that sort of supplemental testing that happens with the material. You can sort of get a live interactive map of all my material deliveries and all of my testing in sort of one big project map.
Yeah, lots of different tools. I think that, you can utilize now and probably down the road here for sure.
So I guess maybe just to kind of circle back a little bit to how we got started. I mentioned it was a couple of years ago, we kind of heard about OnStation at a conference. It was actually Patrick, the president of the company, that came up to us and just asked a couple of simple questions about, hey, what type of projects do you guys do? Does it ever feel like you just don't have the right tool to figure out where you're at on the project, or send somebody a message and say, hey, can you check this out at this station? Send your tester a message to say, hey, I need you to go to this approach where they've got some gravel stockpiled and grab a sample. And they've never been on the project before, so they don't they don't know what approach you're talking about. Simple things like that. We're like, yeah, that's exactly what we're missing. And over the last couple of years, it's migrated from an app that we were trying to figure out to, now they've got desktop access, so we can use it in the office. Now they've got the data portal where we can actually start to pull some of those data records out and keep them with the project. So over the last couple of years, Dave and everybody at OnStation has been great about working with us. If we have suggestions or comments or things aren't working, and then continually making improvements to the app here. So I can only imagine it's going to get better, and I'm going to hold Dave to that.
That's fair. I'll take it. I'll take it. Actually, it's not my job. I'll just go tell the rest of the team that they got more work to do. So.
Was there any other questions or comments? James, you can go ahead to the next slide, I guess. If anybody wants to follow up with one of us here at Apex, there's our email info, and then Dave's as well on the bottom. If you're curious, Dave put the link in the chat there. Go to the website. You can go on YouTube too and search up OnStation. Just remember, there's no space between on and station. So you'll find all their helpful videos that kind of get into the different features and demonstrations and things like that. So,
Brent, just the last thing from my side that I'll leave the group with is it's a free 30-day trial if you're interested in testing it out. If you have a project coming up and you're interested in just seeing what the system looks like, there's no cost to get started. We build that job for free. You get 30 days to use the app in the field, and just tell us what you think about it. So if anybody's interested, again, would love to connect after this and hear how we can do more to help the North Dakota DOT.
Yep, and there are contractors in North Dakota too that are using OnStation on their own projects. I know Border States was one that was using it last year, and like Levi said, he was on a project with them, and it was just a huge benefit to have them linked up to the same project, same flags that we were using. Just the communication time saver of that, and probably avoided some conflicts and arguments over where things actually started and stopped for the day. But once you drop that flag, there's the documentation right there. And like he said, he actually had the TAC guy mark out where he stopped for the day. So it wasn't us versus them type of discussion.
This is Dustin in Grand Forks. I just want to say thank you to both Harrison and Valley City and Apex for, really spearheading ventures into new technology and, kind of on behalf of the entire industry, at least especially the DOT. This stuff appears to be the future. And, it takes someone to, kind of try it out the first time, so to speak, and, and work through some kinks. And, it's really nice when there's people that are willing to do that. And I know Grand Forks has done that for certain things. It just didn't happen to be these things, but really, informative presentations on both technologies. And I see a path forward for everyone to be, sort of this becoming the norm.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we don't have anything else. I don't know if, like I said, if there's any other questions, you can feel free to reach out to one of us. We'd be happy to help you out.
Yeah, thank you for the time today, everybody. It was a pleasure to meet you and pleasure to present.